Hi, in this video I'll explain the main differences in the design of the Supply Chain Management League this year, 2020, and the design that we used last year. In last year's league, we had several active agents. So we had the factory manager, and participants were required to submit factory managers, but the organizing committee provided miners, consumers, a bank, which actually didn't do much last year, and an insurance company. Moreover, it was guaranteed that there will be greedy factory managers that were created by the organizing committee. These were guaranteed to exist in every simulation. So what did we change this year? There is no bank, no insurance company, no explicitly modeled consumers, no explicitly modeled miners, and no guaranteed agents in any simulation. So the only thing that exists in the universe actually are the factory managers that participants will develop. There will be some of the built-in factory managers in some of the simulations just to round up the numbers, but that is not guaranteed and you can't depend on it. So we can say that this year's competition will be more like this. Just factory managers. That's the first difference. So how did we achieve this simplification? That was an example of a production graph from last year's competition. So we had the raw material, a single raw material, and a single final product. And the miners were generating raw materials and negotiating with these agents to sell it to them. Actually, anyone could negotiate with the miners to buy. So this agent could also buy the raw material last year. Then the consumers were consuming the final product, and again they were negotiating with just the people before them or with anyone else in the simulation for buying the final product, bread in this case. One problem with this caused was that every agent was able to negotiate on all levels, which made the problem much harder to handle. You had to decide many more decisions than what you have to decide this year. So what did we do this year? We did this. Okay. So again, it's the same production graph. So you have a single raw material, there is nothing changed here, and the single final product, nothing changed here. But the changes are now the miners are not explicitly modeled, and the consumers are not explicitly modeled. Instead, the first agent, who is capable of producing wheat in this example by using seeds, that is the raw material, has a set of exogenous contracts. That it doesn't need to even negotiate about. It can just accept or reject for buying the seeds. And the same happens on this side. So this agent will have a set of exogenous contracts for selling the bread to a consumer that is not explicitly modeled. And that is driving the market. Everything else in the middle will happen through negotiation. This means that you don't need to know how does the miner work or how does the consumer work. They don't even exist this year. And your agent should be able to work in any place in this production graph. So your agent can be this first agent, it can be this last agent, or an agent in the middle. Should be able to handle any of these situations. And actually the problem that all these agents are facing is pretty similar. And the way that exogenous contracts work is very similar to the way negotiated contracts work. So you don't need to even have a special callback for that or think explicitly about them in a different way. So that's the main difference in the design. This allows us to remove many of the fail-safes that we had last year. We don't need the insurance company. We don't need to be sure that some of our agents exist in every simulation. Okay, so last year, the agent was responsible of doing 4 things. It was responsible of deciding what to buy and when, what to sell and when, and here it needs not only to decide the quantities and times and prices, but even the products, because anyone could trade in any product. This year, agents can only buy materials that they use in production and can only sell things that they produce. This reduces your burden of decision to a much lower level. Second, they needed to decide when to produce and what to produce. And finally, they had to think about the financial control. So you had to think about whether you should buy insurance or not, whether you should get a loan or not get a loan, whether you should hide your money from the simulator and these kind of things. All of this disappeared this year. So this year we have a much simpler design, and it goes something like that. So the only thing you need to think about are buying raw material, production control, and selling products. So it's much simpler in this sense. And now, so these are the main differences between the design of Supply Chain Management League 2019 and Supply Chain Management League 2020. In a nutshell, this year's competition is much more about negotiation and much less about the context around it. It's a much simpler game, which can be modeled in a way that's much deeper than last year. So you can ignore many of the problems that you had to think about last year when you were developing your agent. And you can just focus on how can you decide what to negotiate about, when to negotiate, and how to negotiate, which is the focus of the competition. Thank you.